Hello and welcome back to World Talks, where every word matters. My name is Anna Kalczyńska. Good evening. Serbia held a general strike on Friday, called by the organizers a general civil disobedience, to which the citizens of Serbia have been called by students on a blockade. We are not going to work, we are not going to lectures, we are not doing our daily duties, and we are taking our freedom into our own hands. Your participation makes a difference, the students wrote on Instagram on Wednesday. Numerous companies, associations and political parties have also announced their support for the auction. To unpack the situation in Serbia, the more and more complicated, we're joined by Ivan Vejvoda, Europe Project Director, Institute for Human Sciences in Vienna. Good evening, sir. Good to have you again.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
So what's the situation right now? How do you see it?
Well, as you said in your introduction, today was a culmination point of more than 2 months of protests and memorial minutes every day for the 15 innocent civilians that were killed by this roof or canopy of Novi Sad train station that fell on November 1st, and which created an outburst of anger against what people perceive fully as a captured state and captured institutions, in particularly the justice system and the prosecution, and put forward a demand that has not been met, namely the publication and full transparency and accountability of why this happened. They have demanded the publication of contracts of all those involved, subsidiary and sub-subsidiary companies, as well as the trail of money going to these companies. And this is the reason why the protest is ongoing, because people do not see, led by the students, that anything is seriously being done to actually meet those demands. And as you also rightly said, the protest is very broad for the first time in these 12 years since the election of the ruling party, the Serbian Progressive Party. It has been joined by a variety of unions, by significant business leaders, by small and medium-sized enterprises, by actors, by theaters, and various other unions of professionals. So they, as we see in the pictures here, demand that this actually finally these demands be met.
As you rightly pointed out, it's a very broad spectrum of protesters who piled pressure on Alexander Vučić, who himself, in an attempt to undermine their credibility, let me quote him, calls them a color revolution supported by foreign instructors from several Western and Eastern countries. So what do you make of such a comment?
Well, when regimes and administrations find themselves in this situation, they usually seek an external enemy to portray as the one that is instigating the protests. So in that sense, this is not unexpected. There was 2 days ago a meeting of NGO workshop on very anodyne non-governmental organization activities, and these people from a variety of countries in the region were brought to the Secret Service and then expelled from the country and asked not to come back for a year's time. This just shows that there is a difficulty of the regime to cope with the kinds of issues and challenges they are being confronted. And because the demands, the basic demands that were put forward initially by the students, and let me add that this is happening not only in Belgrade and the big cities of Novi Sad and Niš, but throughout the towns of Serbia. There has been an estimation that at various points during these 2 months, 100 cities and towns have participated in what are these memorials. Let me just explain. These are a blocking of streets every day for 15 minutes in name of the memory of the 15 victims of the roof collapse in Novi Sad.
I must say that it's rather an extraordinary and resolution on the part of those young people. Someone who could say easily, well, it was an accident. Such things happen. I imagine that also for foreign pundits, it's difficult to grasp the intensity of this anger that you recall. And with Alexander Vučić taking a turn towards EU, it's probably the more difficult also to understand this level of frustration. But wouldn't it be easy for Vučić just to turn around, to satisfy the demands and to move forward?
Well, that is what everybody expects, because it's clear that they are definitely individuals and companies that are responsible for what happened. You mentioned, we colloquially say these things happen. They do, but they do not happen in a system where corruption is running rife and where people given the fact that many engineers have been involved in this reconstruction of the railway station and have come forward to say that this was very shoddy work, that much more money was poured into the project than was needed. It is said that 60 million euros were paid out for something that costs in effect around 5, 6, or even less million. So there's an awareness that many of these companies, the main contractor is a Chinese company, the subcontractor is a Hungarian company, and then many subcontractors who are Serbian companies that are close to the regime. So people realize that it is this shoddiness and this corruption that led to the death of 15 people who should not be dead today, but should be alive. And there were youngsters involved and other people who simply found themselves under this canopy at the moment that it collapsed. So going back to your initial thought, yes, one would think that it is clear by now, we're more than 2.5 months from this accident, that the main culprits would be identified, indicted, and put into pre-trial detention.
Exactly. Instead, we hear the time will come when we have to take steps that state take in such situation. Our duty is to tolerate all this for as long as possible, says Alexander Vučić. So doesn't it sound like a threat? How should these words be interpreted?
Well, indeed a threat, because I think the regime does, as I said before, does not know how to cope for the first time with such a broad-based civic protest that involves initially students, senior high school students, now students from so many different schools, and have been joined by citizens who are fully supporting them. We had 21 judges of the Superior Court in Belgrade who came out to support the students yesterday. We have had a number of people from a variety of institutions linked to the state, in particular, all the rectors of the University of Belgrade and the deans have come out fully for. So again, I think that the regime really is at a loss of how to do this, and that is why there is tension growing. And today's what was called the general strike streets were full of thousands of people who came out in the various cities and who made it very clear that they will not back down from the basic and fundamental demands that they have put forward.
It's a very interesting situation, clearly. Only a year has passed since the previous elections were won by the ruling party of Alexander Vučić. Now, the students invited all the citizens for this protest, and they stressed they are not affiliated with any political party. So, in your understanding, is there a total need for a political change? And what is the most realistic scenario right now?
Well, one thing that everyone agrees on, both the protesters and the government on the other side, that the government can only be changed through elections. So there's a clear manifest willingness to avoid any kind of change, political change in the streets. But that means that political pressure is being put on the regime to actually go ahead and address these fundamental issues, which I repeat, are giving back institutional independence to the judiciary and to have a media space. And that's why the public broadcaster, the RTS, the Radio Television Serbia, is under pressure from the protesters because they are not relaying what is happening to the public, even though we are all taxpayers who contribute to the budget of the public broadcaster. So what is the possible outcome? Well, as I said, it should be definitely political. When and how will change occur? That is anyone's guess. The students are determined to have their independent voice, and I think that is the value of this civic protest. But at some moment, it will have to have a political manifestation. At this moment, it is not clear. The opposition itself is offering the regime to have a transitional technocratic government. The regime is refusing that. So these are some of the things that are on the table, but there's no clear way forward. What is clear in the minds of the protesters is that some change will need to happen.
Serbia, captured state, heading for early elections, or remains to be seen. Thank you so much, Ivan Vejvoda, Permanent Fellow, Institute of Human Sciences in Vienna. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you for watching. That concludes this edition of World Talks. Please stay tuned to TVP World.